Is your business protected against the threat of malicious litigation and frivolous lawsuits? Are you sinking company profits into marketing campaigns that do nothing to contribute to the growth of your business? Bottled Business Sense provides practical business perspectives that uniquely emphasize both legal and media marketing strategies to protect and ensure the longevity of your business. Now, whether you're trying to provide a startup business with some level of stability or an established business with foolproof asset and estate protection, or simply attempting to get a better return for your business marketing dollars, Bill Bernard and Rick Moscoso will expose potential pitfalls to ensure the security and growth of your business, free from unwanted expense and the threat of litigation. You'll learn how to implement marketing and protection tools equal to those used by today's most successful corporations. Let's join Bill and Rick for today's Bottled Business Sense show.
Good morning, everyone. Today is Tuesday at 10 a.m. here on the Bottled Business Sense Show. I am Rick Moscoso, one of your co-hosts today. Welcome to all of our returning viewers and listeners out there, and as well as welcoming all of our new viewers and listeners. Thank you for coming. Bill and I are the Bottled Business Sense Show, and we are entrepreneurs like you, and we offer free tips and advice and best practices for your business from a marketing perspective, business perspective, and legal perspective, so you can run your business efficiently and legally and safely, so you can go out there and make money like you set out to do. So with that in mind, you can also reach out to us on social media, on Google+, Facebook, Twitter, at Bottle Business Sense Show, as well as on Gmail at bottlebusinesssenseshow@gmail.com. So if you have a topic in mind or would like to hear a future topic or even be a guest on the show, please reach out to us at our Gmail address, and we look forward to hearing from you. So with that, we're going to roll right into this with my co-host, Mr. Bill Bernard, over there on the other side. How are you doing today, Bill?
I'm doing fantastic. And listen, everybody, you write in, call in, do whatever you need to do. Tell Rick, at the beginning to spice it up a little bit. Say, good morning, everyone. Like Robin Williams, good morning, Vietnam, right? We got to get their blood moving here, Rick. That's what we got to do. So Rick does a great job, but, I like to give him a little hell every now and then. What are partners for, right?
Yeah. Well, that tends to happen when you go on vacation for 3 weeks. And,
yeah.
You're a little bit disconnected. Although we did broadcast from the Midwest, which was a lot of fun and a little change of pace. But glad to be back here in Southern California.
Well, today we are going, speaking of topics, outside my office here, you're probably going to hear some jingling any minute. There's an ice cream man, believe it or not, that comes by this commercial area. Who he expects to sell ice cream to in a commercial area is beyond my imagination. But nevertheless, you may hear it in the background. Speaking of what Rick said at the beginning of the show, we write in or call us about topics. I had a request for a topic that we're going to talk about today, and it's entitled Frequently Asked Questions About California LLCs. And I picked out some hot button topics that I thought, and in fact that I know are frequently asked about LLCs. So we're going to go through these bullet points, give everybody a heads up, because we promote entity preparation here and making sure everybody has their personal assets protected through a business entity. And of course, LLCs are one of the most popular business entities around nowadays, especially. So the first bullet point we're going to tackle is what types of LLCs are there in California?
That's interesting that you mentioned that, Bill, because Bill has recently set me up with an LLC. I recently reorganized my company, and I don't remember a discussion about different types of LLCs. So I'm curious to find out what those are.
So Rick's telling you I didn't give him appropriate legal advice, everybody. Now to talk about a jab. No, you'll see when we talk about this what I mean. Essentially what I mean is this. There are single member LLCs, like yourself, Rick. Mm-hmm. There are multiple member LLCs, and in a multiple member LLC functions like a partnership in many respects. It isn't a partnership, but it functions like one. And then, of course, there is a multi-member manager LLC. So you have the single-member LLC, the multi-member LLC, where all of the members manage the LLC, and then you have the multi-member manager LLC. That means there's multiple members, but a select amount of those members are also picked as managers to run the LLC. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward, but people are often confused because they say, who's going to really, what kind of power does anybody have? Well, it depends on how you want to set up the LLC, how you want to set up the management structure within the LLC. The second bullet point is, all the time this is asked of me, can anyone form an LLC in California? Well, everyone except banking services, insurance services, trust company businesses, and professional services. So if you have something where you've gotten a license or a certification, such as those that are set out in the Business and Professions Code in California or the Chiropractic Act in California, such as doctors, dentists, lawyers, accountants, architects, real estate brokers, contractors, chiropractors, all of these professional organizations are limited, in no pun intended. They're not allowed to form a limited liability company because the limited liability phrasing, the company infers that you have limited liability, and these individuals do not have limited liability. The way they get limited liability, in a manner of speaking, is to obviously get malpractice insurance, number one, and number two, form a business entity known as an S corporation. So not everyone in California can form an LLC.
Wasn't there I thought in another show you had mentioned something about an LLP. What is that? Or
that's a limited liability partnership. Okay. And you can form a limited liability partnership, but that has different rules, different structures to it, and is not managed in the same function or manner as an LLC. That's specifically geared to limit liability of various individuals. And we can talk about that on another show because that would take up some time. So we will do that in the future. The third bullet point is, can a non-resident alien own a percentage of an LLC? Interestingly enough, yes. You can be a non-resident alien and own a percentage interest or units. That's how it's measured in an LLC. You either have membership units and you have percentage ownership interest. They're the same, but you refer to them in different ways. A certain percentage may equal a certain number of units. So unlike an S corporation, you can have a non-resident alien. An S corporation in California, you cannot have non-resident aliens be shareholders. In an LLC in California, you can have non-resident aliens be members. Remember, LLC, you're a member. S corporation or C corporation, you're a shareholder. And so consequently, this is another reason why a lot of people, like LLCs, especially if they have somebody outside of the jurisdiction who's doing business with the company and has an interest in the company or wants an interest in the company. And, the fourth bullet point leads right from that, Rick. We've, in a sense, been talking about some distinctions and advantages, but now the fourth bullet point are, what are some of the specific advantages for an LLC? Well, I'm going to ask you to say the first one, and if you don't know it, Rick, I'm going to be a little upset with you. What would be the very first thing that comes to your mind when you have an LLC? What does it give you?
Well, it gives me some sort of protection in my business, right? From my personal assets.
There you go. It gives you personal limited liability protection. In other words, unless you personally go outside of the company and guarantee a debt, your company is going to provide you with personal asset protection. Your cars, your trucks, your home, your accounts, all of those are protected. The only thing a claimant would have access to would be business assets. And of course, in order to protect business assets, you'd go out and you'd get liability insurance for your business. It's also a pass-through taxable entity. So you eliminate the potential for double taxation like in a C corporation, right? So your profits that you take out of the LLC are reported on through your personal income tax return, and so your income passes through, in other words, to your personal return. You have much greater flexibility, generally speaking, in an LLC than you do with an S corporation when it comes to management. An operating agreement can be drafted and allow for different management styles in an LLC. In a corporation setting, you're going to have officers, president, vice president, treasurer, secretary, for example. You have to have directors appointed. There are a lot more formalities when it comes to holding meetings. You don't have to hold annual meetings for an LLC. However, I always tell people, hold your annual meetings anyway. Document whatever changes you're making in the company. So if someone has a problem with the specifics of a change made during the course of a year or disputes it in some way, it's documented within your so-called minutes. There are no requirement for minutes for LLCs, but I always say have your yearly meeting or your biannual meeting, if you want to do it that way, and document what changes you're going to make in the company, no matter how small they might be. And of course, the flexibility is we can also speak to the flexibility when it comes to income and loss distribution, because one owner, unlike a corporation, one owner in an LLC may contribute cash, and another owner in a multi-member LLC may contribute his goods and services, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm going to do XYZ for the company. That's my ownership interest. That's what I'm putting into the company. And in exchange, you put in X amount of dollars. You could also be a silent investor in a manner of speaking in an LLC and set it up that way. So you have much greater flexibility when it comes to structuring voting and profit participation rights. Let me give you an example. Let's say a corporation is owned by two shareholders, one who owns 60% of the shares and the other who owns 40% of the shares. Well, the two shareholders would still have equal voting rights on the board of directors, even though one shareholder is entitled to 60% of the profits and the other is entitled to 40% of the profits. With a California LLC, the two owners can also take it a step further and provide for 60-40 profit split and voting split. Okay, so one guy has more voting power than another guy on a certain issue that you might want to take up when you have your meeting. So these are all very popular questions that I'm always asked. And again, the one that I seem to come back to the most is, what's the difference between a member-managed LLC and a manager-managed LLC? Well, you set this up in your articles. Your articles should cover all of this. You might have 10 members of an LLC. You want to make 3 the managing members. They're the ones that make the decisions, folks. You could set it up where it has to be unanimous, or you could set it up where it could be a 2-to-1 majority. But otherwise, you have to set it up to where each member has to participate in anything that occurs, any decision-making that occurs within the company. So, you know, you do this by way of your operating agreement. You need an operating agreement when you set up an LLC. I'm not one of those people that say, well, you should just fly by night and just, see whatever happens and deal with it when it happens.
So let me ask you this. I know a lot of our listeners out there are entrepreneurs or single solopreneurs out there. And in general, without getting into too much detail, what's the biggest advantage aside from the formality stuff? Is there any difference in entity protection if they formed an LLC versus a corporation?
No, I mean, generally it gives you the same personal liability protection. And if you don't manage both companies correctly, that is to say, if you give personal guarantees instead of signing off as the title of who you are within each company, if in an S corporation or C corporation setting you don't do your minutes, your meetings, if you act outside the corporate structure in any way, you are going to be held liable, or potentially be held liable. Obviously, if you commit fraud or anything like that, you're going to be personally held liable. That breaks away the structure. So we've talked about this on other shows as well, and we'll probably do another show on this to update it. But how do you become personally liable? Well, you break the shell of the corporation, and you no longer have that personal asset protection. So because there can be disputes among members of an LLC or between shareholders of a corporation, that's the whole backbone behind why you want to have these meetings. And again, the next bullet point would be whether, and I think we mentioned it already, whether you're required to hold meetings for an LLC. And again, the answer is no. But to prevent the imposition of an alter ego theory, where people are accusing you of just having a shell corporation, you're really not a corporation, you really don't conduct business, I would urge people to have these meetings. And it also helps by limiting disputes between and among members. So I strongly suggest having it for an LLC, even though you're not technically required to do so by law. The next bullet point, important one, is an LLC required to maintain certain documents at its principal place of business? The short answer is yes. And I'm going to go through these. It's going to be a little bit dry, but it's very important. Number one, you must maintain a copy of the Articles of Organization and all amendments thereto at your principal place of business. So the Articles of Organization are what you file with the Secretary of State to form your company. You must keep a copy, and that's not necessarily the original, but the copy at your principal place of business. Two, you must keep a copy of your operating agreement at your principal place of business. Three, an alphabetical list of the full name and last known home address of each member of the LLC must be kept at your principal place of business. Number four, if the LLC is manager managed, a current list of the full name and business or residence address of each manager. Now, if you have a single member LLC, it's one and the same with number three, right? Mm-hmm. Number five, a copy of your completed SS4 form used to acquire a taxpayer identification number must be kept for 5 years. That's a form that's filled out on your behalf when you form your LLC. That has to be kept for 5 years, okay? Number six, a copy of the LLC's financial statements must be kept for the past 6 years. Financial statements for the past 6 years. Number seven, a copy of the federal, state, and local income tax returns of the LLC for the past 6 years must be kept for your company. Number eight, the minutes or any written documentation that relates to the internal affairs of the LLC must be kept at your principal place of business for 4 years. And finally, number nine, if the LLC holds title to any real estate, a true copy of the business records relevant to the cost and value of the property must be kept at your place of business. So, for example, an LLC might be a group of real estate investors. Okay, you got to maintain all of that property information at your principal place of business. So, unless I put a year distinction on it or a year limitation on any of the ones I went through, you must keep them always at your principal place of business. The others you need to keep at your principal place of business for only those amount of years that I referenced. And then the final bullet point, Rick, is can I sell my member interest in an LLC? This is a biggie. In California, no one can become a member of an LLC without the consent of a majority voting interest of the members, not counting the new guy who wants to come in. You must have a majority approval. Now, what most people do in an LLC scenario is set up in their operating agreement a means whereby people can sell their interest to somebody else. But again, it's going to have to require the approval of the remaining members, okay, by a majority, typically speaking. Unless you put in your LLC, it has to be unanimous. And then also, typically in an LLC operating agreement, you will have a right of first refusal, meaning if I want to sell my interest to you, Rick, I have to first offer it to the remaining members in order for them to be able to buy the interest first. Those are two separate issues. But regardless of whether you have the right of first refusal, the majority members in an LLC, unless you make it more stringent and make it unanimous, they must approve any change of interest. Why typically? Well, the initial one that comes to mind is you form a company because you want to do business with certain people. You cannot be forced to do business with somebody you don't want to do business with, and so that's why there's got to be this approval.
What amendments need to be made to an LLC then? If you let's say you sell a portion of the company, you want to bring on an investor or a partner into the business to be part of your LLC, what amendments to the documents need to be made?
Well, you'd want to make probably the safest bet would be to make an amendment to the Articles of Organization, and then, of course, amend the operating agreement to reflect the ownership interest of the new member. And that can be done by way of an addendum, or you can just revise the paragraphs that deal with ownership interests within the operating agreement. And then finally, Rick, before we end the show, I should say, how do you dissolve? I mean, I get this question all the time. How do you dissolve or close down an LLC? Here's what you do. Number one, you stop engaging in business. Please stop engaging in business, folks. Don't, well, I'm going to close this thing down, but I'm going to make a few extra deals here anyway, Well, if you're going to close it down on a certain date and these deals come before that date, fine. But stop doing business. Number two, file a final tax return with the Franchise Tax Board. Pay your $800. Number three, file a notice of cancellation and dissolution with the Secretary of State. It's a simple form. You fill it out online. And you must do that within 12 months of filing the final tax return. So you stop doing business, you file a tax return with the Franchise Tax Board, and within 12 months of that, you file your notice of cancellation and dissolution with the Secretary of State of California. So those are the frequently asked questions that I get most often concerning California LLCs. I would urge the viewers and listeners to jot down a few notes about that, or re-listen to the program and make some copious notes if necessary. But these are important because there really is no sense forming a business entity to protect yourself if you're not going to follow the rules. And believe me, there are people that decide, either intentionally or negligently, not to follow the rules. So it doesn't do much good if you don't, you can, what they say, you can lead a horse to water, right? But you can't make them drink. You gotta drink. You gotta drink the water.
That's right. There's no advantage to it if you're not going to play by the rules.
No, there's really not. So I hope this has been somewhat helpful for everyone. It's a short show. It's directly right to the point. And again, a viewer and listener by the name of John asked me to do this, was interested in having a reference point where he could go back and just kind of hit the high notes. So I'm happy to do it. And again, I hope other people can benefit from it, Rick.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, folks, if you ever have any questions like John has, and hopefully we've been able to answer those questions that he had, please send them in. You can reach out to us on social media, or better yet, reach out to us on email at bottledbusinessshow@gmail.com. And if you want to speak with Bill directly, his contact information is below this video. But Bill, why don't you share a couple phone numbers if they want to call you right away?
Sure. Both 949 area code. The office would be 698-6222. And the personal number would be 413-6535. And you can always contact me at bill@wfblegalconsulting.com.
That's right. That's great. Well, reach out to Bill if you have any questions. He always has his phone on the ready for clients out there, especially listeners here of the show. So please reach out to him. And if he doesn't answer right away, he will very quickly. So
I'm either in a meeting or in court if I don't answer. And believe me, I'm happy to return the call as soon as I'm free.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again, Bill, for this great information. Folks,
You're welcome.
Reach out to Bill if you have any questions. And that concludes our episode here on the Bottle Business Sense Show for the frequently asked questions about California LLCs. So until next Tuesday at 10 a.m., we will see you all again next week. Thanks for joining us. I'm Rick Moscoso. And on behalf of Bill Bernard there on the other side, we'll see you all again next week.
Take care and have a prosperous week, everybody.